All right, hello and welcome to those of you that are entering the live room this evening. We are just letting everyone get in and comfortable, and we'll be starting the webinar here in just a minute. So grab yourself a glass of water or get yourself comfortable, and we'll get started here in about 1 minute. Thank you. Welcome everyone, thanks for joining. We're just opening the webinar room here and letting people get situated. We'll be starting the event here shortly in 1 minute. Thank you. All right, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this wellness talk. We are going to be joining Amber Vitale, who you see here on screen with me, and we're going to learn what you can do to help support your body systems and not do things to prevent it from its natural microbiome, maintaining a healthy microbiome, and restoring that microbiome. So my name is Haley, and I run the corporate events program here at Nature's Fair Markets. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to Garden of Life, who is our partner for the event this evening. We'll have about a 30-minute-ish presentation, and any attendees' microphone or video will remain muted through the presentation. But if you do have questions, please pop them in the question and answer chat box. And I will be answering questions I can or flagging them for Amber to do a Q&A at the end. During the Q&A, we will make a few draw prizes for some amazing gifts that have been provided by Garden of Life. And a recording of the presentation will be available to you. It'll be sent by email tomorrow and also saved to our YouTube channel. So before I hand it over to Amber, I'd love to give you a little bit of information on her background. She has practiced as a certified nutritionist, Ayurvedic clinical consultant, and advanced bodywork and yoga therapist since 1996. Much of her nutrition practice was in collaboration with functional medicine doctors and integrative practitioners. Since 2008, she has also produced, written, video and educational content for many publications, as well as her own clients and an interested public audience. Amber has been a member of the Garden of Life education team since 2014, continuing her mission by empowering extraordinary health. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Amber. We're all looking forward to learning from your expertise. There's me and 116 other participants ready to learn, and I will, with that, hand it over to you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Haley. Excellent. Thank you, Nature's Fair, and all of you for attending tonight, for taking the time out of your busy schedules, family, and everything else that's going on to learn, which is great. Learning about how our bodies function best is so important because then we know what to put in them to help them best. And, you know, I think that this will confirm a lot of what you already know, which is you have to eat your veggies and you have to eat your fiber. It's just there's no getting around it. But there are supplements you can take for that. And that we have a human history of fermented food even before we were an agricultural society, things that kind of fermented in nature, and that these all have a benefit to our health that we are lacking in modern society with a modern diet with processed foods. So learning about our microbiome, learning about how it relates to the rest of our body, learning about how it affects our brain, I think is so important. We forget about that. You know, the gut is very much related to the brain, and that is it's kind of newer evidence scientifically, but it's kind of something that we've intuited for a long time. If you haven't ever heard the term microbiome, we're going to talk about this tonight. And it is a term that many people are hearing now. The microbiome really relates to everything on you and in you. In fact, you have probably 100 trillion or more microbial cells in and on body. They outnumber your human cells by 10 to 1. So you are more microbe than you are human, more single-celled microorganism than you are human. And we used to think that everything that functioned in our body was our human cell. And now we know that an enormous part of our immune system, our nervous system, is related to the microbes that live on and in us. There are even things on our eyelashes that you can't see without a microscope that keep you from going blind. You know, they're in your eyebrows and they're in your eyelashes. Without them, you would not function. And if you saw them, you'd probably scream and freak out. So knowing that we're a host for all of these little microorganisms is a little disturbing for some people. They are in all the parts of our body, but the majority of them live in the gastrointestinal tract, from the nose and the mouth all the way to the anus, and they perform very important functions. And if we do not have a healthy, diverse microbiome in the gastrointestinal tract, we have health problems throughout the body. That is the source of illness throughout the body. Many, many, many illnesses are related to an unhealthy microbiome and the effects of an imbalanced immune system as a result of that. If you do not have a healthy microbiota, that's kind of the local reference microbiota on your skin, you could have rashes, you could have eczema, you could have dermatitis, you could have rosacea. If you don't have a healthy microbiome in your ears, you're more prone to ear infections. If you don't have a healthy microbiome in the lining of your lungs, you're more prone to respiratory infections, viruses, bronchitis, things like that. So there has been tremendous research on the human microbiome, starting with something called the Human Microbiome Project a couple decades ago. And that really, it was supposed to just be a 5-year project, but it has been ongoing through the National Institutes of Health and then globally. And it has brought us a lot of information we really did not expect to find. The probiotics that we will talk about tonight, the ones that are formulated for Garden of Life, we formulate in collaboration with Dr. David Perlmutter. You may have heard of, or maybe not, you can look him up, Dr. David Perlmutter, MD, a neurologist, who realized that his whole world was diagnose and adios. In other words, he could diagnose Parkinson's, but not have much to help someone. He could diagnose Alzheimer's, not have much to help someone. Diagnose ALS, not have much to help someone. So it was, here's your diagnosis, but we really don't have anything to help you. We can just sort of mitigate the symptoms until the end of your life. And he learned more and more about how prevention, of course, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that preventing our nervous systems, our neurology from getting to that point of disease had a lot to do with the microbiome, the health of the microbiome, the food we eat, the lifestyle that we live. And so he has become a global speaker, a spokesperson, and a formulator to support the prevention of neurological disorders and many other things as well, because they are certainly all related. And so the human microbiome and all of the organisms that are in it, and especially talking about what is in the gastrointestinal tract, from here to the end of our gastrointestinal tract, a large part of what a healthy microbiome does is keep out pathogens. So you may have microbes that are just kind of literally eating at your table. They're consuming what you consume, and they might be consuming pathogens. They might be, you know, just kind of hanging out. And depending upon what you eat and how you live your life, your lifestyle, your stress levels, they can either perform beneficial functions for you or negative functions for you. So those that perform beneficial functions for you are probiotic. They are for your life. And they do things like prevent you from getting sick from pathogens. You have a little food that was off at a street fair. A healthy microbiome will prevent you from getting sick or even noticing that anything was wrong, right? They help prevent you from getting gas and bloating. They help to produce things like short chain fatty acids that have a healing effect at the gut lining and even at the brain level, for example. You produce all kinds of compounds via your human mammalian cells and their interaction with those microorganisms. They make enzymes, neurotransmitters, hormones. They convert enzymes, neurotransmitters, hormones. They make B vitamins. When you're pregnant, you preferentially feed a larger bifidobacterium population of bacteria, and they produce more folates. And folates, like folic acid, are preventative of neural tube defects and other defects in infants. And so it's interesting that the foods that you should eat when you're pregnant also support a healthy microbiome that will make more folates. And if we were living a natural diet, that would happen automatically. Your immune system, we say that 2/3 of it is in the gut, and that includes the microbial cells that live there. And without a healthy gut lining and healthy immune cells in the gut and healthy microbial cells in the gut, you will not have a balanced immune system that attacks pathogens, defends you, and that doesn't over attack your own healthy cells with an autoimmune type situation or excessive inflammation. We all need inflammation. If we did not have inflammation, we would have to live in a plastic bubble and be protected from everything. So inflammation is a normal immune response that is important for defense and for healing. But in this world today, so many of us have excessive inflammation, and it winds up attacking our own cells, damaging them, causing all this collateral damage, and running rampant for years and years and years, and exhausting your resources that should be able to defend you against true pathogens and true injury, right? And so many peripheral diseases are related to disease in the gut. And in Ayurvedic medicine, we say the origin of health and disease is in the gut. And anything that you might say that you have, a heart disease, arthritis, diabetes, dementia, anxiety, depression, is related to an imbalance in the gut. And that is what is so important to understand, because and liberating to understand, because we can actually make a change in our health at all levels by making a change in our diet and our lifestyle and the diversity of the microbiome of our gut. What we feed our microbes determines the health of the compounds they make for us. It has not been very long that we humans have been living this unnatural life, unnatural lighting. I'm in front of it right now. Unnatural food, processed food, unnatural fertilizer, unnatural water, unnatural drinks, unnatural things in the air, moving at crazy speeds on cars and airplanes. These things are not natural for our nervous system, and it has not been very long. The majority of human history is used to what you see in these pictures. Now, most of us are experiencing this on an everyday level. Stress, just as I said, riding in a car and moving fast down the road, there is no adaptation to that. The human history is not used to that, right? We are not accustomed to that. We are not accustomed to the level of mental stress that we experience every day. The things that we obsess about in the past, the things we worry about in the future, that was not a part of our everyday life. It was really more of what was in front of us throughout human history. Glyphosate, if you don't know what that is, it's in Roundup. Roundup is a common pesticide and herbicide, a weed killer that is used on crops ubiquitously in North America and in other countries. It has been around since the 80s. It started in the early 80s, being used to dry crops so they could go make your bread very quickly, or your bean soup or whatever. And so it was allowed agriculturally to be sprayed on crops even before 1996, when genetically modified crops were developed to be tolerant to glyphosate. In other words, you could spray the whole field, kill off the weeds, and save the corn, save the soybean, save the canola, save the cottonseed, save the beets, right? So these are all, alfalfa now as well is a glyphosate tolerant crop or Roundup ready crop. They can be grown, sprayed with glyphosate, harvested, the weeds die, the crop does not. But you're getting that in your body, and it's getting the soil, the air, the water, and it is known as a carcinogen. And its first patents were as a chelating agent. It removes minerals from the soil, from the plant. That's how it kills the weeds. And it is known to be antibiotic. And as you know, when you take too many antibiotics and you get a yeast infection or a fungal infection as a result of that, the soil has the same response. So if you're spraying glyphosate in between rows of wine grapes to make wine, that soil will become devoid of certain bacteria, certain microorganisms, but fungus will thrive, and you will have to use more antifungals on your grapes, which will wind up in your wine, and that will affect your health. So you can see how that cycle works with the soil as much as it does with us. And we are exposed to medications with side effects on our microbiome all the time. Even, pharmacy grade, like, I don't know, like, here we have like standard pharmacies that sell multivitamins. These are all laboratory chemicals, and they actually are destructive to the microbiome because of the amount and the form that they come in. So even things that we think are maybe good for us actually are not. And we have an unhealthy microbiome from the start because of how we're born. It is not our choice. We may have been, a third or more of you may have been born by C-section. You may have been formula fed rather than breastfed. You may have had antibiotics and reflux medications very early on. The water that is being used to make your baby formula is full of chlorine, fluorine, and bromine, which all displace iodine in the body and kill off microbes in the gut. The diet itself that we then are accustomed to, that we become used to in our families, that we choose as adults ourselves, is full of things that do not nourish a healthy microbiome, do not support it with fibers and polyphenols and resistant starches, but instead feed the bad bacteria with sugar and cause a proliferation of bacteria that produce things that are no good for you at all. Alcohol with food as a part of a traditional diet can actually be beneficial for the microbiome, but alcohol as a stress coping mechanism, taken especially on an empty stomach, absolutely kills the microbiome in your mouth and all the way down. And we're always stressed. And that, even if you did everything else right, that stress will cause you to have an unhealthy microbiome and a damaged and leaky gut lining. So we have to manage our stress. We have to manage our sleep as much as we have to manage our diet and our lifestyle. So, in a hunter-gatherer diet, we've actually been able to, there are still people who live that way in the world, and there have been ongoing studies in Africa, in Siberia, very fascinating studies that I could get into if we had hours tonight, but we don't. Haley gave me a half hour. That's a short amount of time, Haley. But we know from even studying fossils of coprolite, which is fossilized poop, fossilized feces of humans, we know what kinds of microbes thrived in our ancestors due to their diet. We know how much fiber they ate. We know how much starch they got. It's in their fossilized feces. So, nothing goes away ever, not even your poop. And so even beyond the hunter-gatherer diet, which was full of fiber and resistant starches because of all the tubers they ate, as we became agriculturalists, as we stored food, whether it was grain or legumes, or whether we were milking any kind of an animal, it all needed to be preserved in some way. So anything you milk, I don't care if it's a camel or a horse or a water buffalo or a cow or a goat or a sheep, to save it, it has to be fermented. And that fermentation breeds microbes that are beneficial and tasty to keep out putrefying, rotting type microorganisms, right, that are toxic to you, that make you sick. And so this has been the case for humans for thousands of years, that we have had these kinds of fermented foods in our diet, and many still do all around the world, but it's not coming from your grocery store shelf. Your commercial typical yogurt on a grocery store shelf is not going to have the level of fermentation organisms in it, or their postbiotics, the things they produce, at the level as if you were fermenting it at home on your own counter and had an ongoing, like a sourdough starter. That would be an example, that you might be accustomed to. So places that we would always get probiotics naturally could be any kind of fermented vegetable. It can be anything. It can be kvass made from beets, a good Russian drink of fermented beets. You could have any kind of sauerkraut or any kind of sour vegetable, any fermented vegetable that's German or Japanese or Chinese or Korean, or like kimchi, for example. Any kind of fermented dairy product from anything that you could milk would be a natural source of probiotics. Also, the food that we eat right out of the soil. So if you grow a garden and you are munching on things from the garden without washing it, or you just kind of rinse it, but you don't overdo it, or you don't peel, you're getting certain organisms that flourish in the soil that are also necessary in you. And this is probably the one that most of us are missing the most, are these soil-derived organisms, SBOs, soil-based organisms that grow in healthy soil and that you can't even get in a fermented food. You really have to be eating out of healthy soil. And if all of your produce comes from a store with a water spraying down on it that's chlorinated, fluoridated, brominated, you're not getting those organisms at all. As we travel through the birth canal, we get a huge dose of information from the microbiome of our mother's birth canal. Today, mother's birth canals aren't so diverse, aren't so healthy, and many kids are not being born through the birth canal. And so they're missing that first inoculation of healthy microorganisms. We used to think that the uterus, the womb, was sterile. We know that is not true now. We know that there is still some interaction of a microbiome there because babies are still born with a microbiome. It is just much less diverse. And the training of the immune system of a child born by C-section is much less appropriate, much less proper, and they have more immune imbalances as a result. So how do we nourish these microorganisms that we are a host to? You have to just come to terms with the fact that you have these beasties inside of you, and if you feed them well, they will treat you well. And this is the part where we say you have to have plants in your diet. You don't have to be a vegan. You don't even have to be a vegetarian, but you need a lot of plants in your diet, a lot of plants on your plate. And we want to talk about the sources of healthy fibers from these plants. All plant contains fiber, soluble and insoluble. Insoluble is the kind that kind of scrubs you clean and it doesn't really break down at all. And you might see it on the other end. Soluble fiber forms usually a little bit of a gel. And this is the one that is really prebiotic. It is the one that you don't digest, but your microorganisms do. They get energy from it and they produce substances that are very beneficial for you. They might produce the B vitamins. They might produce neurotransmitters. They might produce short chain fatty acids, which are little tiny fats that travel into your bloodstream and go and keep your brain healthy and fuel your brain cells, like butyric acid. We know that as you feed the microbes of your small intestine, the lactobacillus bacteria, they make substances that feed the bifidobacteria in the large intestine. So there's this incredible relationship. The RDA, or the recommended daily allowance or intake, is 25 grams a day, but many hunter-gatherers like the Hadza in Tanzania and Africa get upwards of 150 grams of fiber a day because they're constantly gathering things out of the soil. And that is not something that any of us could even possibly approach with a modern diet. And we're going to talk about resistant starches in a moment, which are a whole different thing. But if you're looking at prebiotic fiber and resistant starch, really, you can see that there are many foods, but they're not foods that we typically have on our plate. So chicory root and Jerusalem artichoke inulin are both used in a lot of supplements. And that's where most people get them, unless you love to eat sunchokes or Jerusalem artichokes, which I do, or you access chicory root in some way. Dandelion greens are great, but look at how it has to be for dandelion greens, garlic, leek, and onion. It really has to be raw to get all that resistant starch. There are people who eat an entire raw onion every day. They do not have many friends, but their microbiome is healthy. So that is something that offers this very slippery, soluble fiber that's very good for a healthy microbiome. But if you use a lot of cooked onions in your cuisine, or even raw onions chopped up, for example, you are getting these prebiotic soluble fibers. Acacia gum is what we use in our supplements, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but it was an actual medicine and food for long journeys throughout Saharan Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. It is a common food there that grows from the sap of the acacia tree. The acacia trees thrive. All you have to do is collect the sap and powder it, and it turns it into this acacia gum. So it's a very sustainable source of this soluble fiber. Resistant starch you'll never see on a label. There's no standard for labeling of resistant starch, but we find it in foods all over the world, in Asia, Southeast Asia, South America, Central America, certain parts of Siberia, Russia. These are things that have become common in traditional diets that offer this resistant starch that our microbes and especially our soil-based organisms thrive on. And they then produce very important compounds that are beneficial to our health. A great source of information on resistant starch is actually Mark Sisson on Mark's Daily Apple. He's a great, just wonderful teacher to the layperson if you're looking for somebody to follow about just a super healthy traditional diet. And your fibers and starches are a very important part of that. You can't get away with not eating them. And we really have to have plant food that has these starches, that has these soluble and insoluble fibers, and has color in it, because plants with color have antioxidants, polyphenols, flavonoids that also nourishes a healthy microbiome and gives them the substrate to make vitamins and certain cofactors for our overall health and all kinds of cellular reactions that we perform every single day. So it's a part of your detox. It's a part of your support of replication of your DNA accurately so that you don't get mutations. So we need these foods that are supporting the proper functioning of these microorganisms in our bodies. So what we set out to do at Garden of Life with the help of Dr. David Perlmutter was to address specific conditions and symptoms for people. The fact that many people have food sensitivities, they need a hypoallergenic formula, they're intolerant to certain foods, and that we can actually provide strong probiotics that are shelf stable by putting it in a new kind of a bottle. So we'll look at all of that. We developed a whole line of probiotic products, and to be a probiotic product, you have to adhere to the new definition from the National Institutes of Health, from the Human Microbiome Project's discoveries, which says that to be a probiotic for your health, a organism must be something that would normally exist in a human, right? Like that it's not something that we get from a dog's mouth or that was cultured from a pig, but something that normally exists in humans that are healthy and don't have any particular disease state. And it would be something that we might eat. So it'd be in fermented food that humans might take in. It must be relatively tolerant to your stomach acid and to your bile from your liver and gallbladder. In other words, it has to pass through the digestive tract, and enough of them have to thrive and make it past that gauntlet and be able to colonize in the small and large intestine to perform functions for your body. So we check for that. This is something that we test as a tolerance to acid and bile. It must be administered in a high enough count of live cells to actually cause your immune system to have a response where your immune system says, what is this information and what do we do with this? And to actually trigger an immunomodulating and immune balancing response. So these are things that we absolutely adhere to. It also must not be a bacterium that produces any toxic compounds, nor can it develop a resistance to antibiotic therapy, but it tends, we want it to actually help support a healthy microbiome during antibiotic therapy. If you have to take an antibiotic, we want the probiotics to keep all of your microorganisms healthy through that period of time where you're killing off the one that's harming you. We also developed a digestive enzyme that is what you would want from healthy, whole, unprocessed food, and we'll talk about that as well toward the end. So let's get into the product line that was developed. Every one of these capsules is in a capsule only for your convenience, and it is in a capsule to keep everything together, but you do not have to swallow the capsule. If you'd rather open it up and put it in a smoothie or put it in a yogurt drink or in your yogurt or in your oatmeal once it's cooled a little bit, just don't cook it. You can absolutely do that. And every capsule has these prebiotics with it. So organic potato starch, which is the resistant starch we were talking about, which helps with your insulin sensitivity. In other words, that your cells respond to insulin and tuck that sugar away where it needs to be, getting it out of the bloodstream. that your appetite is actually normalized because you feel satiated, and that you're producing lots of these short chain fatty acids that go from your gut to your brain. Your brain can't make them, but it runs on them. It runs clean on butyrate. It's like running on clean gasoline, you know. So you can't make it in the brain. You have to make it in the gut lining, and you have to have the microbes and the food to be able to make this butyric acid. There are other short chain fatty acids made that stay in the gut and help to modulate the immune functioning and the microbiome and the pathogenic resistance in the whole gut. We also include, as I said, the acacia gum. And this is coming from sub-Saharan Africa in the region of Sudan and Chad. And this is trees that we have encouraged. It's been since the 1950s, the Acacia Project. You can actually look that up. That they started to repopulate this region with acacia trees and get all the people who live there on board with nurturing these acacia trees and not cutting them down for housing or for firewood, but giving them a livelihood that was based on letting them grow. They provide shade and nesting for animals, and they provide this gum and can grow for years and years and years and years. And this is important locally where people live there. And it's also important for supplements like this, where in that capsule, these strains are getting their brown bag lunch on their way to your intestinal tract. As soon as they come alive in a moist, warm, proper pH, they have something to munch on and can start producing very important metabolites that are beneficial for your health all the way through the digestive tract. So let's take a look at what we offer at Garden of Light that can help support a healthier microbiome and address very specific symptoms or conditions that you might be facing. We start with these products with what we call a 9-to-5 blend. And this is a general blend of 9 lactobacillus species strains that mostly tend to stay in the small intestine, and 5 bifidobacterium species strain that mostly tend to be in the large intestine or the colon. And so these are, by and large, beneficial for balancing the immune response, colonizing and populating the gut lining, producing beneficial compounds, converting hormones, neurotransmitters, enzymes beneficially, for resisting pathogens, for improving the lining, the intestinal barrier function is what we call that, the lining of the intestinal tract, for helping you recover after an illness or food poisoning or an antibiotic or a steroid, or helping you recover from, you know, any kind of toxic load that you might be exposed to or be experiencing. And so starting with the once daily at 30 billion live cells, this means that if we hydrate this and look at it under a microscope, we will find at least 30 billion live cells in this capsule. And that is equivalent to about half of what our ancestors who ate fermented dairy would be getting in a standard day's fermented dairy or fermented vegetable diet. And so we can even look at places around the world like Eastern Europe and Korea and India, where people still, Greece, where people still consume these fermented foods every day, and see that they're easily getting this many live cells in their fermented foods every day. This is a 2-to-1 ratio of those lactobacillus species strains that tend to populate the small intestine to the bifidobacterium that tend to populate the large intestine, and that's supportive for general daily health. This is great for people who've never taken a probiotic. It's great for the elderly. It's great for people who generally have a good diet and just need a little probiotic support because they don't eat out of a garden and they don't get a lot of fermented foods into their diet. This is the next step up of that daily probiotic for people who need extra support. It's very heavy in the bifidobacteria species strains, which means it's supporting the colon. And so it may be that this person has more immune issues, more gastrointestinal issues like bloating, gas and discomfort, lower bowel pain and distension that they're to alleviate. Maybe some slow transit time, taking more than 18 hours for food to go through the gastrointestinal tract. And there are some really superstar strains in here in addition to that 9-to-5 blend, like the Lactobacillus rhamnosus HN001, very good for informing the immune system to have a healthy response. your NCFM acidophilus, which is a very anti-infective acidophilus that feeds the colon. It feeds the microbiome of the colon, the bifidobacteria, and helps to support the reduction of symptoms in that area. Lactobacillus paracasei 37, very good at resisting pathogens, at maintaining barrier function and forming the immune system, and also helping you recover from antibiotic therapy. I love this product. I have it in the house all the time. If I have food poisoning, if I feel like I'm coming down with something, if I have to go on a medication, this is really the go-to. The NCFM acidophilus is always in our very specific, condition-specific probiotics because it is the most well-researched Lactobacillus acidophilus in the world. And just a quick note about what a strain means. A strain of a probiotic is like a breed of a dog. All dogs are Canis domesticus, genus Canis, species domesticus. But a poodle is a whole different strain of dog than a wolfhound, right? And that is the same with Lactobacillus acidophilus. The NCFM is a different strain than LA14, for example, or any other acidophilus that has been studied. And they each perform there are similarities, but they may perform very specific functions. All dogs bark, right? But they bark in different voices and in different levels. And so that can really be a metaphor for the differences between strains of probiotics. This is taking that ultra and amping it up for when you've had to go on an antibiotic and you need to alleviate the symptoms, the side effects of that antibiotic. It could be intestinal, it could be skin, all kinds of things. You could have acid reflux, nausea, who knows? And you need to restore your microbiota back to normal or better than normal. And this is a high cell count. You want to take 2 capsules a day. There's enough here for 2 weeks, and it's very, very heavy in Lactobacillus paracasei, that LP37, that is known to help protect your microbiome from the assault of antibiotics and to help restore it back to a healthy state after you have finished taking the antibiotic. It's actually advised to take a probiotic while you're on an antibiotic, but you want to take it at least 2 hours away from when you're taking that antibiotic to give it the best chance to survive. So this is a great one for that particular. It's good to do this during your antibiotic therapy and then go to the once daily 90 billion after, perhaps. That's one way to think about it. What is different about Restore is that we also include one of those soil-based organisms that you get out of healthy soil in this, and it's really the only product in Canada that you have from Garden of Life that has this Bacillus subtilis in it. It is a real informer of the immune system from the gut lining. It makes short-chain fatty acids that your brain needs. It helps to support both the gut lining and the motility through the gut. It helps to defend you even from things that are far away from the gut, like respiratory infections and viruses. And Bacillus subtilis is also known to help with your lipid profile, so cholesterol levels. It's known to help with your fat to lean mass ratio. So there's a lot of things outside of the gut that it is known to support. And it's very important that we have this in our bodies and in our food, and most of us do not get it. So it is in the Restore. If you're looking for a once daily support that is specifically for women, we include in our once daily women's strains that are specifically for women's female floral balance. In all of our female specific probiotics, we include rhamnosus and reuteri because together they've been the most researched combination for maintaining the right pH and the right microbiota in the urogenital system so that women who are under all kinds of stressors don't even know that they're being helped. They don't know that they're about to go out of balance and have an imbalance in their flora of their vaginal canal, maybe too much yeast, maybe too much bad bacteria. And this keeps things right on track because of these 2 strains along with the other ones in the blend. For men, we're trying to maintain health on a daily basis and support the respiratory tract and overall lower bowel health because we want their prostate to be healthy. And the lower bowel and the prostate are very close together. And if you have an unhealthy colon, you will have an unhealthy prostate. We also know that men don't take their supplements as much as women. And so we want to get them with overall immune support with whatever we get into their bodies at any given time. And so this one is designed specifically for the man in your life. Urinary tract plus is for anybody who's prone to urinary tract infections on a recurring basis, men or women, but it is usually women who suffer that or know that they're suffering that. But again, man or woman can take it. Because it's usually women, we do have the rhamnosus and reuteri strains in here that we always use, but we are also using that super anti-infective NCFM acidophilus, and there is a special cranberry extract in here that is known to keep especially E. coli bacteria, the most common infectious organism in the urinary tract, from sticking. And it makes it so its little legs can't stick to the lining, and it flushes out with your urine every time. You're supposed to drink a lot of water when you have a urinary tract infection. And this type of cranberry extract works better than any kind of cranberry juice or cranberry extract, which lose that anti-sticky activity after about 10 hours. The cranberry extract keeps that anti-sticking, anti-adhesion activity for over 24 hours, well into the next day. And therefore, you just have to take your 2 capsules 1 time a day, and they're not sticking, and your immune system can get a hold of the infection. The Prostate Plus also uses cranberry, but it is a different formulation of cranberry that is focused on its anti-inflammatory effect. For men with prostatic inflammation, what they experience is impeded urine flow, and that causes them to not be able to fully evacuate, not feel like they've gotten everything out. Ultrasound images actually show residual urine in the bladder. That can lead to infections. It can lead to prostatitis. They're getting up in the middle of the night to urinate. This is disruptive to sleep, disruptive to health. And so the whole focus is on urine flow, the volume, the flow rate, the elimination of all of it from the bladder, the symptoms of comfort versus discomfort. So all of these organisms in here are to support a healthy microbiome, because if you have a prostate problem, you have an intestinal microbiome problem, and it's been going on for years, likely. So we want to support their bowel, especially the lower bowel, as I said, because it is right up against the prostate. And we want to help them have better urine flow with the cranberry. This was researched over 6 months, and at 3 months, we already had improvement over the prescription drug for inflamed prostate. It was already much improved over that. And then after 6 months, you had twice the benefits that you got from the prescription drug with none of the side effects. And so for men who are worried about their prostate starting in their 30s or 40s, for men who tend to already have problems, this becomes your daily probiotic because it's supporting proper urine flow and a healthy microbiome at the same time. The Mood Plus product is actually, it's like the superstar of the doctor formulated probiotics, because as we were understanding the research on the human microbiome, the fact that we could affect anxiety and depression by helping to make a more balanced gut is so promising. And it was amazing to be one of the first companies to come out with a probiotic product that included the 2 leading strains that were researched for anxiety and depression as a response to stress, and to bring them into this in the clinically relevant amount, which we always do, by the way. So this product is a very lactobacillus species heavy product, so small intestine. And we have 2 very specific strains in there, a lacto and a bifido strain, that are independently researched with no other intervention, no anxiety or antidepressant medication, no other probiotics, no changes in food, no stress management intervention, no counseling, nothing like that, and shown to be beneficial. And we'll look at that in a moment. And we've added 300 milligrams of organic ashwagandha to lower your body's response to stress. In other words, we over-respond to things that aren't really deadly. You know, lions aren't really chasing you, but you're acting like they are, and you're thinking like they are, and your body thinks they are. Ashwagandha helps to lower that cortisol output down to a normal level. But these 2 strains were studied in people who were prone to anxiety and depression as a result to stress. And so they documented them at baseline with no intervention, exposed them to levels of stress, had them do these various questionnaires, and tested their cortisol levels in their urine. Sorry, let me back up a little bit. And then they gave them these 2 strains for only 3 weeks. And these are 2 different clinical studies, and then tested them again. And we found not only a reduction in their subjective experience of that stress, so the questionnaires that they answered, also their reports of physical symptoms like nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, for example, bloating, and that quantitative measurement of their urinary free cortisol went down by 13.5% on average. So that to me was astounding. Anything that can help you clear that cortisol from your body the way that it should be is going to tremendously benefit you in your stress management. So this product, this mood probiotic, is definitely for anybody that is suffering the effects of stress, whether you're just feeling it in your head or you're experiencing it even at the gut level. If you tend to get gastrointestinal upset in response to stress, this is definitely just what the doctor ordered for you. It's an amazing product. I like to take it when I'm under a lot of excessive stress because everything in here is protective. For women that have been diagnosed as pregnant, women who have found themselves pregnant or are planning to get pregnant, the prenatal is very specific. 20 billion CFU is the limit of live cells that have been studied in pregnant women. So if you have not been on a probiotic before and you are now pregnant, and this is your first probiotic, this is the one to take. Also, if you are already on a probiotic and you are pregnant, but you have a family history of immune imbalances, I would get on this probiotic because it has a very specific strain, Lactobacillus rhamnosus HN001, researched specifically in pregnant women and following their infants after birth all the way through 4 years and seeing a reduced incidence of things like eczema, which is an autoimmune condition that does initiate in the gut. It is your immune system not properly addressing pathogens and over attacking your own healthy cells. So this strain creates a healthy, balanced immune response, even when given to the mom prior to giving birth to the baby. So using it during pregnancy and through breastfeeding, it's very beneficial. We also have it in some children's products, for example, because kids taking it also get that benefit. So this is really the one for anybody that is wanting to be pregnant or is already pregnant. And then our kids' chewables come in 3 flavors. They're delicious. They're also great for elderly people who don't want to mess with a capsule or a powder. They're full of strains that are generally supportive for the immune system and for helping get more out of the foods because kids are picky and they may not be eating great every single day. You kind of have to look at the whole week. We've included vitamin C from amla berry, vitamin D. We have a little bit of cranberry in here to help the teeth. These are sugar-free. They're not sweetened with anything. They're naturally delicious and they're beneficial for the oral microbiome and the dentition. So I liked to give this to my kids when they were younger on the way out the door to school or on the way to bed because they didn't need to brush their teeth afterwards, and it helps to defend them in the mouth, which is where kids get sick. They put everything in their mouth all the time, right? Chewing on their pencil, chewing on their fingernails, sharing things, chewing on toys when they're really little. So this is great because it's providing that defense right there in the gastrointestinal tract. Also has this Lactobacillus gasseri here, which is known to be very beneficial at all ages, but for kids, especially for allergic rhinitis. And we know a lot of kids are suffering from that today. And you've got the watermelon and strawberry and banana flavors as well in that. Kids are getting a rough start, being born by C-section, being formula fed, being on more sugars, more processed foods, more colorants, dyes, artificial flavors, preservatives. All these things are much more harmful to children than they are even to us. The water that we're drinking or not drinking. And kids are taking their immune system for a walk. They're training their immune system, and probiotics really help them to do that. So our kids need probiotics as much or more than we do. And finally, the enzyme. So if you can't digest your food, you will not absorb it. If you cannot absorb it, you will not merit the benefits of it. If you can't digest it, even your microbiome won't get all the benefits from it. So this digestive enzyme was developed, and originally I looked at it compared to tableted or capsuled enzymes. And I thought, this isn't so strong. I wonder if it will be any good. But we've added these 13 digestive enzymes that you see here to a base of 29 different enzyme-rich fruit and vegetable powders that still have active enzyme activity. And so when I got this in my hand several years ago and started to use it after meals, I found it to be very effective. It's especially effective within the first 30 minutes of having eaten something that you know you need help digesting. Carbs, fats, or proteins. If you eat a heavy meal, something doesn't sit well with you, you ate too fast, you ate while under stress, you always have trouble digesting certain things. In any case, this can absolutely help you. You start with one chewable, you can take a couple if you need to. You can even use it in the absence of food, like when you're not eating, but you're getting reflux. It seems to help like a Tums would help, except it's actually a benefit of better stomach acid and better digestive benefits when you do eat your food. So the whole line of doctor formulated probiotics and the enzymes were all designed to help support a healthier microbiome. Does it replace a healthy diet? Does it replace the prebiotic fibers and the resistant starches that you need in your diet? No, but if this is all you're going to do, I'd rather you do this than nothing. If you're going to eat, Tim Hortons, if you're going to eat fast food, take your probiotics, take your enzymes, and you'll be better off. If you want to get the most for your money, change your diet, get some stress management, get better sleep, get off medications that you don't really need anymore, support a healthy microbiome, feed your microbiome, and you'll get a lot out of your probiotic products, and they will work very well for you. So I hope this was helpful, and I'm going to surrender to Haley in case we have any questions in the chat room.
Amazing, Amber. That was so informative. I love the idea of breaking the capsule open and putting it into like a smoothie or a yogurt bowl. That's something I've never even considered, and now I'm like, that's one less pill I have to take, a vitamin I have to take, and so I will definitely be incorporating that into my habits. We have some really great questions, and I'll start with a few that have already been put into the Q&A box, but if there's more to come, please go ahead and I'll keep my eye on that. So from Barbara, I think this gets the conversation going in the right direction, and Nathan, as a recommendation of like just where to start. If you're not taking a probiotic at all right now, I suggested that, like, obviously getting into the store and talking to someone at a Nature's Fair about like what your outcomes are, you're going to end up being directed. But as a general recommendation, Amber, what would you say as a good place to start? Nathan said, is it the Restore 200? What would you say?
Well, if you didn't recognize anything in there that was condition specific for you, like you don't have any particular symptoms and you generally feel okay, it's fine to go with a once daily, men's or women's, or if you want one for the whole family, get the 30 billion. If you don't have a great diet, if it's not full of baskets of fruits and vegetables, and not full of healthy homegrown food and fermented foods, you may need a higher CFU count, colony forming unit count. You might want to start with something like the once daily ultra 90 billion in order to really start raising that diversity and that overall population of microorganisms in the gastrointestinal tract, especially if you have some symptoms of digestive distress or any other peripheral immune systems. I mean, as I said, even heart disease is a sign that your gut needs help. Even diabetes is a sign that your gut needs help. If you have recently or in the past been on a lot of antibiotics, that may be a sign to start with something like the Restore or the 90 billion, because you may want to hit it hard for a month and then back down to a daily maintenance. I am not for people taking pills their whole life if they can change their diet and lifestyle. Totally. And if you can get to a point where you're taking in more fermented foods and more soluble fibers and resistant starches, then the probiotics are just coordinates to steer you in the right direction. And once you've got the right direction, you can fuel it with your diet and lifestyle, right? Sometimes we need something to steer us into a healthy urinary tract, a healthier prostate, a healthier nervous system. And so we want to choose those condition-specific products.
Totally. That's a great answer. A few people have asked, what is the best time of day to take the probiotic? Does it need to be with or without food? Is it morning or night? Can it be taken with other supplements? All those fun things.
I always say the best time to take a probiotic is when you will remember, because if you can't take it, you won't take it. You don't remember to take it because it's in the fridge. You are not going to get the benefit of it while it sits on your shelf. So if you have trouble with taking things that are in the fridge, get one of the products that are shelf stable. They're just in a different bottle, and the bottle is sealed with a liner and a desiccant, and it keeps the humidity below 7%, and the probiotics stay stable. Otherwise, you have to keep them in the fridge to keep them stable. So several of these products come shelf stable. The once daily 30 billion, your men's, your women's, your mood, your urinary tract, your prostate plus, the restore, they all come in a shelf stable bottle. So putting it next to your toothbrush, putting it in your bag or your briefcase or on your desk, somewhere you'll remember it, is the first most important advice. I can make an argument for empty stomach or with food for any of these. Food buffers the stomach acid and the bile and gives them a better chance to take hold. On an empty stomach, you're taking it with water. That also buffers it and gives them a chance to get directly to the gut lining. If you have a lot of constipation, I kind of recommend taking them on an empty stomach and letting them move stuff out of you. If you are generally having troubles with the foods that you eat, I would take them with your food as though you were having a fermented food.
Yeah. And someone had asked that is, what is the best probiotic to improve sluggish digestive system or constipation? So then that's a good tip. Take it on an empty stomach if you can.
And I would suggest the Once Daily Ultra because it's very much focused on the colon and on discomfort in the colon.
Yeah, that's great. If you are looking for help to get a good sleep, would the mood formula be a good option?
It is a good option. And I can't say that it matters what time of day you take it because ashwagandha is an adaptogen and that works all day long to help mitigate the effects of stress. So you could take it at night and see if it helps you kind of calm down immediately enough to go to bed and sleep well. But most people need stress management during the day so that by the time they get to bed, they're not so wigged out, right? Yeah. So mood is supportive of a healthier sleep pattern because it is supportive of a healthier stress response. Experiment with it. You may want to take it during the day to mitigate all the stress that you're under, or you may want to take it later in the day to kind of calm everything down and help you have a more restful sleep. Ashwagandha does have a reputation in Ayurvedic medicine for providing a deep and dreamless sleep. And so it is just known to be something that gives you this very restful sleep when you need it, very restorative. But it also can be something to give you more energy and endurance. So you have to kind of see what time of day it works best for you. And the mood, you want to take the 2 capsules at once, not separately, because they have the better efficacy that way.
Together, that makes sense.
Same with the urinary tract plus and the prostate plus.
Okay. Great. Linda has asked us, how quickly would you notice that this probiotic's working when you incorporate it into your wellness routine?
I know it's not what you want to hear, Linda, but it really depends on the person and it really depends upon the situation. What's great about probiotics is some people will notice right away because these organisms can mitigate some of the discomfort that can be happening as a result of an unhealthy microbiome or a non-diverse microbiome. Sometimes people feel worse before they feel better because you're introducing new organisms, just like if you went traveling to another country and sometimes your gut's like, whoa, what was that? You might have more gurgling. You might have more gas or constipation to start with. So drink extra water and just stick with it. But, you know, these are all 30-day bottles. And we would think that by the end of 30 days, you would certainly be feeling some changes and feeling some differences. Something like the mood with the ashwagandha takes that edge off your stress right away. But if you're looking for the clinical results, you saw that took place over 3 weeks. And if you're looking for reproductive system results from ashwagandha, we look at the Ayurvedic timeline, which is after 35 days. You start to see reproductive results, better reproductive cycles for men or women. Urinary Tract Plus, it is a level of cranberry that can help mitigate a current urinary tract infection, but it's really designed for those that tend to get them repeatedly. Prostate Plus, you kind of saw the benefit, improving, their symptoms were reducing over 3 months and then further over 6 months. So with that one, you're not going to get a reduction in prostatic inflammation overnight. It's going to take a month. There were some people who saw it in the first week in the study, and some people it took a full 6 months to really say, hey, wait, things are much better.
Okay, that's good to know. Kathy was wondering about alternating formulas. So say if she did the once daily and then alternated that between the mood, would there be benefit to that? Or have you seen people do that before?
It definitely can, especially if you're using the mood for the ashwagandha, especially. Yes, and I would take and the blueberry, taking it on days when you're especially stressed can be very adaptogenic and mitigate your body's negative responses to that stress. But if you want it to affect the axis between the gut and the brain, you should take it continuously for a period of time. I do advocate finishing one bottle and then choosing a different formulation with a different variety of organisms and ratios of those organisms, because part of the formulas of these probiotics, they're not all the same organism in the same amount. The ratios of each organism change as a part of the overall formulation. So it is good to mix it up sometimes. The Restore is great to get in there sometimes because of the Bacillus subtilis, which isn't in any of the other probiotics. But if you have symptoms like urinary tract, stick with it. If you have symptoms like urine flow impediment from swollen prostate, stick with it. If you have anxiety, depression, stress, nervousness, stick with the mood for a while. Stay with them. But if you're generally healthy or getting certain digestive system benefits, you could go from the 30 to the 90 to the Restore to the once daily, women's or men's, and mix it up a little bit each time. Look for what's on sale and, get just like as if you were changing to a different kefir or a yogurt or a kombucha or a sauerkraut, you want to get different organisms.
Totally. On the note of foods and drinks outside of the actual probiotics, there was a great question about the benefits of drinking apple cider vinegar daily and that contributing to the microbiome. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
It's a great question because apple cider vinegar is a level of acidity that is really correct for the thriving of acid-loving microorganisms. So lactobacillus organisms make lactic acid to create an acidic environment that they can thrive in. Bifidobacteria make acetic acid, which is vinegar, actually, in the large intestine, which creates an environment that they can thrive in. The gut lining is actually acidic, and this is why an acid like apple cider vinegar can actually help with digestion and the microbiome. And so it is something that you can take, and then you can swallow your probiotic, and they're getting the right pH right away, and it doesn't kill them. You just never want to take your probiotic with vodka, because it will definitely kill.
Noted. Thank you. There's quite a few more questions here, but a lot of them do have some very specific symptoms and personal health questions. And what I'm just going to say to those folks is to definitely talk to your own health practitioner and come to a store and talk to one of our amazing team members. They'll be able to help you out and guide you in the right direction. But I'll take one final question here from Shirley, and then I'll announce the 3 winners of the prizes, and then we'll wrap it up. And the final question is if there's a better probiotic to be taking if you are entering menopause.
The women's once daily, I have watched perimenopausal women scoop up like 8 of them at a time because it's keeping that good floral balance, which is important at any age. So getting the right Reuteri rhamnosus species strains together, the NCFM acidophilus, all of these are supportive of that lining, keeping a healthy tone and, lubrication to the vagina for women that are going into menopause is so important. But The mood probiotic for many women going to menopause may be your best friend. There is a small percentage of the population of women who are menopausal that don't respond well to ashwagandha. They actually go more toward the testosterone direction and start raging at people. So if you take ashwagandha and you feel like a rager instead of calm and like having a good nap, you do not do well with it at that time. And it may have to do with your hormones. But many women do very well with the ashwagandha and the mood entering into menopause, because we just get to a point where we're like fed up with anything that stresses us, and we're just kind of rah, and the mood really helps to take that edge off of that.
Perfect. Amazing. Well, Amber, that was such an informative presentation tonight, and we had a great attendance and great question. Thank you to our audience for being so engaged. And the random number generator has picked some amazing winners here. So we have Eleanor, Hillary, and Sandra. And I have your emails here. You'll be receiving an email directly from me, and we'll coordinate your prize to be picked up from your closest Nature's Fair market. So once again, thank you to Garden of Life and Amber and the whole team. And we hope to see you at our next webinar event here with BioSil coming up in April. And have a wonderful evening.
Thank you all so much.
Good night.